everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us. We got an exceptional show lined up for you guys today. I am welcoming Tony and Cherie Rathman, as well as Ron Yacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez, who collectively have been pioneering and creating a new process of I.T.C, or Instrumental Transcommunication with spirits, called Staticom Project. And they are joining us today to talk about this, as well as I.T.C, and, so we can learn a little bit more about what's going on here. And you guys are going to get to hear some of the samples of what they've been doing and the incredible results they're getting. So without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Hi, Brent. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And this is kind of in a lot of ways, a revolutionary first for the Paranormal Portal, because oftentimes I speak to experiencers and authors, other hosts, and I know that you all have, varied backgrounds in all of that. But it's really exciting to me to talk to you guys in terms of creating a brand new process in order to achieve communication with spirits and potentially other entities that, that we just don't understand. And so I guess first off, if you guys wouldn't mind, Tony and Cherie, could you give us a little bit of your background and what led you to where you are?
Sure. Well, do you want to tell a story?
Well, we started actually as a paranormal investigators, husband and wife. So that was probably 12 years.
14.
Oh, no. And then for the rest of the year is when you become an I.T.C, builder or researcher. So I think you should explain more.
All right. Well, my father was a physics, chemistry, and physical science teacher. So I didn't really give any attention to paranormal, spirits, disembodied consciousness. It just never really crossed my mind. Maybe a little bit here and there, but wasn't a normal subject matter. When I met my wife, I noticed she started watching the paranormal shows when they first came out, and she was absolutely fascinated with them. She'd always get me to try to come and watch. Oh, you got to watch this. This is fascinating. I'd watch about 2 minutes of it, get up and be like, no, this isn't real. This is for entertainment only. None of this exists. And then she tricked me on Valentine's Day in 2010.
I tricked you.
It was Valentine's Day weekend coming up, 2010. And I said, what do you want to do? We'd usually go to a hotel, hang out, swim. She goes, I want to do something different this year. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She said, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was just like, oh my God. But I had two choices. I could take her, or I could have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So I took her and, played along. She had a great time, and that was all that really mattered to me. But when she got the stuff home and started going through it, the videos, the pictures, the audio recordings, I was blown away.
And that's why we specializes with EVPs, because of that when we started.
Correct. And so we tried to debunk it, couldn't do it. So I said, let's just go back. I mean, I probably spent 2 months trying to give rational explanation to where this stuff was coming from. Couldn't do it. So we went back. I thought, okay, maybe there's air vents that voice was coming through, or weird lighting causing what looked like strange objects in photos. Well, we came back with even more evidence, and that's when it started. It's never stopped, continued to grow. But like Cherie said, I was fascinated with EVPs because out of all the paranormal equipment that's out there, I could get more information from the EVP than I could any other device, whether a light was flashing or, whatever the equipment did, read some reading within the environment. I could tell even before listening to the message, whether it was male or female, whether it was an adult or a child. I could tell if there was an accent or a territorial dialect in the way they spoke. I could tell their mood, whether they were happy, sad, upset, angry. That to me was unbeatable. So we began to focus on EVP. Then we focused on spirit boxes in the I.T.C realm. And then today we teamed up with Ron and Lourdes to take DRV into Staticom.
Yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. And please, Ron and Lourdes, if you guys could do the same.
We could. Just to piggyback off where Tony left off, them teaming up with us, for us, if we had to pinpoint breakthrough moments in our progress and development and what we were trying to do from the jump, that's one of them. Because they have been integral parts of this from the jump. And that's what's made this partnership beautiful. The background that I come from, I started investigating. I lived in Los Angeles for 14 years. We're in New Jersey now, literally across the river from the Upper West Side of Manhattan, New York City. And when I was out there at the time, the person I was seeing when I had gotten separated was not into the same shows I was. We couldn't agree on what to watch. 8,000 cable channels, and we just couldn't pick something. And then we agreed on something paranormal. Like, oh. Started watching it. A lot of the shows, Ghost Adventures, had been going to locations in Southern California, close to where we lived. So we went, got to be part of a team. Also was very fascinated early on with EVP, this idea of recording voices out of thin air that you just couldn't hear without some kind of mechanism. But I had what I call the Chad moment, which if you know Chad Lindbergh from Fast and the Furious, and he did a show with John L. Tenney. I never remember the name of the show. He was with us. It was the late Debbie Constantino, Glen Tavern Inn, Santa Paula, 3rd floor, 30 people, Spirit Box SB7 session. Everybody intros themselves, last 2 people. Then Chad goes, and hello, spirits. My name is Chad. And not even 15 seconds later, I heard, I know Chad. And I was like, whoa, what was that? What is he holding and where do I get one? And I was hooked. I went, that's real time. How does that happen? So I was enamored. I was fascinated. I was like, all right. And then I got into it and I went through the same routes. I bought what was commercially available, commercially made, synonymous with I.T.C, which was sweeping ghost boxes or spirit boxes. And I was sucked in immediately to the fact that this real-time thing was even a possibility. People studied it. Flash forward, I am, unlike Tony, not your handyman tools, able to build stuff. If I was soldering things, I would be high-fiving you with fewer fingers. So I don't do it. But I did want to contribute and dive further in some way into instrumental transcommunication because I was fascinated with it. I came across the workings of Dr. Annabella Cardoso in Spain, who of the pioneers who put EVP and I.T.C on the map, period. Despite popular belief from the American ghost hunting crowd, it's not Frank Sumption and the Frank's box. Before that was direct radio voice, which came out of EVP research. Constantine Rodave, the father of direct radio voice, Friedrich Jurgensen, Marcello Bacci in Italy, who made it most famous. So Dr. Cardoso sat with those people. I read her books. She was approachable. I reached out. She kind of mentored me into this. I would ask her questions. To this day, Tony and I still talk to her. I made sure she met him. And so through that, we resurrected direct radio voice. And then we were fascinated with when we saw like Marcello Bacci getting full sentences, dialogue, like we're talking out of an old vacuum tube radio. So this idea that technology was the forefront of I.T.C got a little bit supplanted for me seeing that. And then I looked at her, I went, I don't know how nobody's doing this. It's not on TV, which is the answer. So we sat in front of a boombox world band radio listening to static. And then we tried heterodyning frequencies, mixing them using tone generators and you name it. We tried a variety of things to try to add noise, signal, whatever. And then started with direct radio voice to do live filtration, which is what we do now, of the white noise, no sweeping, and to slow it down, which in I.T.C history had never been done before. So that's how we evolved to it. And then she and I started seeing each other in 2016, right? Mm-hmm. I get points for that. Got the year right. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So I came from a background dealing with the paranormal. My family practices espiritismo, which is a form of mediumship in the Caribbean. But I saw something during one of their ceremonies that terrified me. And so I shied away from it. Although I would experience paranormal moments, I wouldn't dismiss them because I knew that they were real, but I still was hesitant to really dive into it. And then I met him in 2016, like he said. And what fascinated me the most was getting EVPs out of thin air in the digital recorder. I loved the ghost boxes and the spirit boxes. They were cool, but that was really my main focus. I loved that. So when we started messing around with direct radio voice, having it in a barren channel and just with white noise, and we started getting voices, that fascinated me. That got me hooked. And then it evolved to Staticom and Tony and Cherie joining us. So that's my background.
No, that's wonderful. And I think the I.T.C. to me is exceptionally exciting because, as we were discussing before the shows, I mean, the ramifications of making meaningful contact with people that might have passed by, passed through, or even other potential entities that maybe were never human, and I understand that some people may be like, well, ooh, that must be bad. And not necessarily. I think the universe is a huge place and it's energetic. The universe is energetic. And so it's not too much of a reach. I wouldn't think that some intelligences may have developed in a more energetic fashion rather than a physical fashion. And that's probably within the scope of reality. But the ramifications of being able to exchange knowledge and to have communication, to me, it's like, getting a person on the moon, Would you guys agree?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating to be able to dialogue with something that you cannot see.
Yes.
Honestly.
Something, someone.
Yeah.
And we also, the four of us, besides the Staticom method that's unique to us, we also have a philosophy of mind, an idea called analytic idealism, which supports a reality that makes what we do natural, not supernatural.
Right.
So when you mentioned reality a minute ago, that kind of got my attention because that's part of the foundation for why we think the stuff that we do, the stuff that mediums do, why a lot of this stuff is possible.
Right.
And I think the reason why the paranormalists of today loses the argument when they try to argue this with cynics or people who are throwing applied science at them is because we're paradoxically trying to defy and adhere to the laws of physical science at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's paranormal. It's outside the measurable norm. And then we try to explain it by cramming it back into that.
Right.
And that's a losing game.
Right. Because most people are working on the foundation of physicalism, but we're not. We're under the foundation of analytic idealism.
And to basically give a breakdown of that, it basically just says that analytical idealism basically says that the one known factor in the universe is consciousness, whether that be individual consciousness in each individual or that of the collective consciousness or the universal consciousness, which it returns to after the human physical form. And that is the be all end all of life as we know it. Now, are there other factors? Absolutely. But that's the piece that continues on.
Yeah.
Right. It's what's known as an ontological primitive. It is the meaning of what reality is. It is the one thing that is not reducible to something else, is experience. Mm-hmm. And universal phenomenal consciousness is what we're all connected to. Everything is within it. We are dissociated, or what under the idea of what's called multiple personality disorder, you have multiple identities or alters within one entity. We are that to universal phenomenal consciousness. We are alters or each individual identities within a greater consciousness. So when you have dissociation, when we die, you have a reassimilation back into mind at large. So a lot of the stuff or the entities that we feel like we're communicating with are already reassimilated back into that. But that reality allows for I.T.C, for mediumship, for psychometry, for a lot of the things that people say that they experience without having to come up with some grandiose, mystical, woo-woo explanation or trying to make this that something that applied sciences, physical sciences, physicalism can measure, because you can't. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. All we can know in reality ever is experience.
Right. I have to comment on that too, and I think you guys are absolutely dead on with that. And there's a hubris that comes with the title science, and it's taking into a consideration by those that adhere to it that science is complete, science is finished, and it's an established authority. But science is always expanding and evolving, and it's like we don't know so much, and we're just starting to crack the surface of the truth of things. And that's why we're trying to instill an idea of a philosophy as a substrate for all of this stuff, because science speaks to models and predicts behaviors of reality. It doesn't tell you what it is. It speaks to what it might do. It doesn't define what it is. Philosophy looks to do that. And because there's an absence of philosophy, we have this neo-priesthood of science where people think that these are like infallible oracles, and when they put their stamp on something or speak to something, it's just beyond question. But if there's a bias that's involved, and we all have them, then you're not getting – I almost think you can't really get an objective opinion or take, because we have subjective experience by nature. So it's hard to have objectivity is almost a red herring to say that it exists. But that's the idea, is that they feel like they're giving you numbers, data, statistics, and that's objective, non-biased information that you can't refute. But the numbers and measurements are what gives you physicality. Without measurements, you have nothing physical, and you can't measure unless you perceive. So experience comes first. Yeah, absolutely. You would think that, since we're discussing the concepts of science, and I'm by no means a scientist. In fact, after we're done recording, I'm going to have to look up a lot of the words you used. I'm just joking. That was a joke. But
I'm going to too.
But what does occur to me is that that in order to truly look at things in the purest scientific vision, it should allow for all possibilities until they can be definitively ruled out. And we don't have the science to rule them out. So the dismissiveness of the academics or traditional Western thinking, I think,
it's
is
scientism.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It's scientific. It's not scientific. Science is a method of inquiry. It's not an ideology.
Very, very true. I like that. That's well said. And now, in order to, I guess, I'd like to discuss some of the other forms of I.T.C. that we've been kind of referencing, but how do they differ? And eventually, let's get to Staticom and how is it different from all of the other ones?
Well, I mean, I.T.C. or Instrumental Transcommunication is basically using a third-party device to capture the communication. So even doing EVPs or electronic voice phenomena, where you take a recorder, you set it down, you ask questions, and then you review it later, which is why EVP recording is called record and review. But you're using a third-party device to capture it, an electronic third-party device. So that's one form. The second form is what the term I.T.C. was really created to speak to when it was meant to be two-way communication. Whereas if you're doing EVP, you probably go home, review it, maybe you hear the answers then, but you've already left. So whatever answers you received didn't facilitate the ongoing communication. I.T.C. was designed for two-way. Direct radio voice fits into that phenomenon. Spirit boxes do too, and I maybe I should let Ron speak to this, but the the whole spirit box development, although Frank Sumption did a fantastic thing with creating spirit boxes, we've built them for 12 years. We have like 13 of them sitting in boxes right now, but we haven't touched them in 2 years because of DRV and now Staticom. But the only concern with moving to the spirit box, and maybe nobody knew it at the time, but direct radio voice, which luckily Ron and Lourdes went back to look up, learn, and redevelop, got lost because everybody, as the television shows came out, saw spirit boxes. They were small, they were portable. You flipped them on, and that's all you had to do. And they saw responses come through, and so it took off, especially here in the Americas. But the difference between a spirit box and direct radio voice was the length of the answers. When we saw Ron and Lourdes use it for the first time, he was getting full sentences. And we believe some of the fallback or drawback that came from the spirit box development was that, and again, this is still kind of theory on our part, but it all fits together, is that the premise behind a spirit box is that a spirit would use the fragments of speech as it scanned through various radio stations, and then they would readjust it or whatever to turn it into whatever sentence they wanted to say. We can tell you today, now only using broadband white noise, is that the radio sweep does nothing but break up their communication. That's why you'd get a word or two at most, and then it would go away.
Isn't that called stochastic resonance?
That is
very good. That's
great
it.
call.
Yes,
and I'll let Ron explain how we believe stochastic resonance works with what we do.
That's absolutely correct. That is what it is. White noise, all the frequencies we can hear, 20 hertz to 20,000. Something enters into it, vibrates at the same level, same frequency. Then you get amplitude through the resonance, but the rest of the white noise stays at a spectral frequency of 1, and there's no variance other than that. And then what we do with Staticom filtering in real time is that we lop off that bottom layer of noise floor, leaving only for the final product what is the vocals that have pushed through or that came through enough through resonance, sometimes inverse stochastic resonance. And I will tell you, and she should explain it, that when I arrived at the idea of stochastic resonance as maybe being what it was, and then I bounced it off Tony and Cherie, and they agreed, it was something that she noticed, and it was from spirit box use with regards to the vocals coming through. And when she said it, and I'll let her tell it now, but when she said it, I was like, oh, like it was a light bulb moment for me, and went, wait a minute.
Because I noticed when I heard responses on spirit boxes and ghost boxes, it was never within the suite. And I know people would hear responses within the suite, but I would notice, I was like, that's the end of a song, that's this, that's that. But when I heard the voices, because they do work, they were either below the suite, like you can hear it very low, or really loud, and it would sometimes replace that noise because it was so loud. And I mentioned that to him, and we kind of, and it's a theory, but we believe that they're using the white noise, and that's why you hear those responses like that, and how it resonates. That's why it's either below or above the sweep, and that's why the messages are short, because it's in sweeping. And we know from earlier pioneers that when spirits speak, when voices come in, they come in faster than our human ears can detect it. So if you're sweeping, it almost makes no sense to sweep, because they're coming in most of the time they're coming in faster than we can detect it anyway.
Yes, and faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking. She by trade is a court reporter, so she listens to people testifying. She gets paid by the state of New York. Different speeds, cadences, accents, people talking over each other from a distance near the microphone. So when audio engineers speak to how audio behaves and how you produce sound, I understand and respect it. But when someone who has a linguistic background listening and identifying speech says otherwise, I'm going with the court reporter.
I literally, what I do for the living, I do for the dead, pretty much, because now we're not in the courtrooms anymore, and I got to listen to audio. Now everything is recorded, so now I got to listen to the audio. So I do that for a living, and then I also do it with the dead too.
Yeah. A big thing that Tony said that may, to the casual listener, come across as just something explanatory that he was saying as part of something else, but should not get lost, is that when you have a brilliant ghost box builder, which is what he is, and they say the words, "I haven't turned one on in 2 years because," that's powerful. Yeah. He knows them, he builds them, he makes quiet ones that were good. He's not using them anymore. That speaks to the efficacy and the impact of what Staticom and direct radio voice before that has done. Because and if he wants to elaborate on it, he can. But when he says that, I feel like that's something to punctuate, not to just get lost in conversation, because he knows the inner workings. He built great ones, and he doesn't touch them anymore.
Well, one of the things that Ron brought up, and this was probably our second or third operating experience, and this was still direct radio voice at the time. We hadn't turned it to Staticom yet. But for years, we'd build spirit boxes, and we'd take them out, take them to locations or wherever we were going to investigate. And I would ask question after question after question, hoping to get some sort of vocal response with timing and relevance that gave me an intelligent answer to what I was asking. But it was literally me 80% of the time. Are there any spirits here? Do you want to communicate? You know, whatever questions I was asking. When I flipped on direct radio voice, and like I said, it's probably the third, maybe fourth time we were using it, I hadn't even said anything yet. And they were asking me questions. I was the one answering. That blew me away.
Yeah. He called me. He called me.
He got interrogated.
To tell me this. He goes, "Something happened that's never happened to me before." I went, "What?" He said, "They asked me questions," the same way you just said it now. And I was like, "What, really?" And he was over the moon with it. And I get it, because that's I think everybody's experience is that that usually does not happen with normal means or usual means of I.T.C. Not to my knowledge. If it does, we don't claim to know every experience anybody has with every device out there. But
sure.
It's rare enough that a guy who built them and used them for 12 years experienced it for the first time.
Now, do you find that in your conversations you guys have had, that the spirits understand this process? Do they understand what's happening, or is it like, is it to them like, where's that coming from? How can I hear, and how can they hear me? What is your take on that?
I believe that they know what's happening, but I have to say, because we've been doing some changes, and I noticed the other day we were doing some changes, and we heard a voice saying, "What's happening?" But I think in the beginning they may, when we first started, they may have been a little confused, but I think now, since we built a connection, all four of us, they pretty much know what we're doing, because we get the Staticom name sometimes. Yeah. So I think they know. But if we do changes, I notice that sometimes they'll say, what's happening? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we think we're contacting or communicating with consciousness. Mm-hmm. And some of it could be people who reassimilated back in the universal phenomenal consciousness. So their memories and who they identified to be and all that stuff goes with them. They don't have personal agency anymore. They're not in the body making decisions. But we do think that we're able to communicate with consciousness, which explains a lot of, I guess, what's going on. So we do think that they do know when we ask questions about our environment. What color is my glasses? And they answer. They don't have eyes, right? And if these are things that we, for billions of years of evolution, develop ocular systems to be able to do that, then it's not rational to assume that spirit can see without eyes. Right. But we think that they're grokking or attaining that information through us, because we're inputting that to universal phenomenal consciousness. Through our experiences, and it's available to them.
Right.
No. Yeah, I think all for me too, or I know for everybody, the spirit knows that this method is coming. And actually, when we're also doing session, Tony will ask help from them, and they will respond to Tony. Like, for example, like, "Hey, can you help us tune in this?" And they will say left, right, or up, down.
Wow.
So
or leave it.
Yeah, they would give information as to what adjustments in which direction. But just to back up a little bit, when we first started using this communication method, or DRV at that time, I remember hearing them say, he can hear us. We think he can hear us. And I said, yeah, I can hear you. See, he can hear us. So there was a level. We're not there anymore because this was 2 years ago or a year and a half ago or whatever it was. But there was an adjustment period for them to assimilate that, oh my gosh, they can hear me speak. Mm-hmm. And then, we've got ones where somebody said something, I repeated what he said, and he said, oh my gosh, he heard me. He goes, I'm scared when I speak, because it was almost like spiritual wiretapping, where sometimes we'd turn it on and they weren't speaking to us. They were speaking to each other, but we could hear it all.
That's amazing.
And it's fascinating because when we first started, we had the same experience. They were like, they can hear us. That's exactly. But at this point, I think they know what we're doing. They know what we're doing now. But we did experience that as well. One
of the clips we shared too was something that we recorded at a certain time that has an amazing story behind it. It's befuddling to us. We just unearthed it recently. So when you go through the clips, I guess whatever order you play, what you play is fine. But maybe we'll start off with that one called Just Staticom, because that one has an interesting story to it, which is very recent.
I mean, I can dig that up. That was
if you want to play it first, and then we can explain it.
So this is from the files you sent, and it's which one? Just Staticom?
Yeah, just Staticom. Yep, it's very short.
Okay.
Not our clearest, but there is a story behind it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just open this and do that. Okay, so what did we just see there?
Did you hear it? We didn't hear anything.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I heard it.
Okay, did you hear the word Staticom?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it appears on the screen as well, but...
Perfect. All right. So here's what happened. Lourdes and I were sitting down having dinner within the last week or so. And we're watching. Tony appeared on a podcast talking about Staticom and the philosophy and everything. And as always, fantastic job. We both could listen to him and Cherie speak for hours. They're awesome at it. Show finishes. And we're watching it through YouTube. And I was like, look at some of the stuff. We've been doing this for a while. Look at some of the old, just using a radio, white noise, no computers, no stuff, right? And we got good stuff back then. So I'm like, people think it's just a computer that's making all this stuff happen. It's not. The voices were there before we even did that. That was just an enhancement. So I play one of these old files. It's 5 minutes long. It's one of our very first direct radio voice recordings.
Again, no software, just the radio, barren channel.
Yep, it's like 222 kilohertz, just white noise static. Nothing there. It's a 5 minute long clip, and Lourdes talked before about how Tony and Cherie, and we also had voices in the beginning saying that, oh, hear me, you can hear me. Mm-hmm. There's a thing in this clip going, hear me, hear me, hear me, like a bunch of people saying it sounds like. So there was some stuff that came through. She holds on to this because she hears something that she wants to replay, but she knows that, I don't know if it's my obsessive compulsive thing, but I want to watch the whole clip. I want to hear it, and we can discuss when it's done.
So in the 1 minute mark, I hear something.
Yep, about 1 minute and 8 seconds to be exact, and I know that because she found it like that. So we go back, and she goes, I heard something, and we play it, and I went, did you hear that? And she goes, that's why I wanted to go back. I went, oh, hold on. So we play it again. And sure enough, there's the word Staticom. Now, we called Tony and Cherie, and I said, listen, I'm going to send him the clip, and then we're going to call them. But we're not going to tell them exactly what's going on. We're going to tell it to him in pieces because I want to hear his reaction, especially Tony, because when he's hit by something, he could not hide it. So he watches it, and Tony and Cherie, and if they want to speak to this, they were wondering why you can clearly hear the word Staticom. but the clarity of the vocals were not where it is now, especially with the upgrade that Tony just made with our 2.0 version.
So they were confused.
So they're a little confused. Why does it not sound as good? But it says Staticom. We can hear it. So then I call him up. I went, all right, so you heard it. So I said, so this was not recorded with 2.0. He goes, oh, so this is 1.0, the first version of it. Yeah, I said it was recorded in the month of January. Said it specifically that way for a reason. And he goes, oh, so this is what, like the beginning of the year? I went, it wasn't this year. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, this was recorded January 25th, 2020, which is 4 years ago, 3.5 years before we even took the name Staticom on.
Right.
And he goes, are you shitting me? I went, I wish I was.
Really?
No.
Wow.
So, I don't know, Tony, if you want to tell this part of the story of where the name came from.
Yeah. So Ron and I started, I said, you're kidding me. This was 4 years ago. How is that even possible? And Ron said to me, well, the only way that, based on our whole philosophy of how thoughts get put out into the universal consciousness, he said, let's check with the gentleman, because this name was actually produced by somebody else in the I.T.C field arena. And when he heard what we were doing, and we had removed the radio from it, I asked him, I said, can we use that name? And he said, yeah. So we reached out to him, or Ron did actually, and said, hey, just out of curiosity, when did you come up with this name? And what did he say, 10 or 12 years ago? 10 or
12 years ago, because we were trying to establish if somebody had conceived it and it was part of their thought processes and experience, and then that would be part of universal phenomenal consciousness for it to come back to us when it was recognized as the same thing.
Right, the same process, right, of you listening to white noise.
Right, because his process at the time, he was messing around with white noise. That's correct. Exactly what he was doing. And he came up with the name Staticom 10, 12 years earlier. Then we started messing with white noise. And so the name had to have existed before we started working with it. And
before we didn't even...
We don't even know
we knew of them, but we didn't know them. We didn't know you personally in 2020.
Right. We didn't even know each other that way. Nope. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So there's your definition of the time space as a construct that we made that may not really exist in reality as it is out there, because that name 10, 12 years ago was conceived. We did something that sounds like it, and then it came out. And if she hadn't heard it, again, court reporter,
I was shocked.
How she
but you want to hear.
It was in the 1 minute mark. I said, now I got to hold on until he finishes, because he's not going to let me speak. So I'm going to have to wait here for 4 minutes before I can tell him. And so be it. That's what happened.
Yeah, the whole non-Euclidean space-time is just a mind blower, isn't it? That's crazy. Wow.
Absolutely.
It's just amazing.
I just covered that a little bit on my last podcast episode, and it was just like such an incredible discussion. And I'm fully on board with that. I think that, time is our perception of the universe, and that, perhaps it all exists, everything all at once, and it's our awareness that changes. So fascinating.
Right. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Even time and space are things that we experience, right? And experiences happen within consciousness, not outside of consciousness. So still, as your primacy for reality, consciousness, right? Universal phenomenal consciousness, mentation, because it's not the scaffolding for consciousness, it's within it.
Yeah. Right.
That's when this happened.
Good time's a human construct.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We also, with this method, we looked at, and this is what I love about the partnership we have. You want to work with people who have integrity, who, if you're not in the room with them, you trust their process. We have that. We're in New Jersey. They're in Arizona. Tony calls and tells me something. Cherie calls and tells me something. There is not a question in my mind that this is legitimately vetted, that they know what they're looking at and talking about. And that's important to us because I.T.C comes with its hangups. We were talking before the show a little bit with you. There's two main criticisms I.T.C gets. The first one is radio bleed through or leakage. Mm-hmm. Lourdes kind of spoke to it a moment ago as well. So we ruled that out by taking the radio out, and we now source the white noise from a generator. There are two instances that led to that, and I would love Tony to tell that part of it in a moment. Why we source the white noise differently now, and we use generators that make it in real time. So that takes the radio bleed through out of the equation. You're not picking up radio voices. We cannot receive a signal. We cannot record with the method closed circuit. Excuse me. The other thing that I.T.C gets a lot is that you're getting warbles and artifacts of sound, and you're interpreting those to be words because white noise is random. And in randomness, we can always discern patterns. So first of all, when somebody says that we can discern patterns, they're appealing to our intellect. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. That's how we cognitively communicate. We acknowledge and recognize patterns and sounds that form words and thoughts and sentences with coherence. We don't hear the cat meow and go, oh, he wants the keys to the car again. That doesn't happen, right? So there is something to that part of it. The other thing is that it's such a dismissive thing when they say that it's random. White noise is not fundamentally random. It's influenced by quantum fields, electromagnetic fields, charged particles, or ions from the sun. There's a variety of things that are going on that we can't measure at the time. So it's not random to say that dismissively. What it is, it's computationally irreducible. We can't calculate it at the moment, but it's not random. Okay. And when what we get sounds like speech, it's identified as speech by a court reporter.
And everybody else in the room.
And everybody else in the room, then we feel that it is in fact not random, but deterministic and very identifiable.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, just out of curiosity, and I don't pretend to know much about your process using a generator and stuff, but is white noise generally stuck like in a fixed frequency range, or are you creating white noise at certain hertz and up and down, or are you finding that you generally get more response within a certain range of white noise versus other ranges? And I'm not asking for proprietary information here. So if that's getting too close to anything, by all means.
Not at all.
Okay.
But Tony has the best explanation of it.
Well, broadband white noise literally consists of every frequency the human ear can hear.
Okay.
So it ranges from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. We use the whole thing. The reason we use the whole thing is because people always ask, well, okay, if you're getting these voices, what frequency range are they coming in at? Mm-hmm. They are all over the boards. Okay. And even the same voice can be at one frequency during one statement and a completely different frequency at the next statement, but yet the voice sounds absolutely identical. Unless you were monitoring it, you wouldn't know the difference. But that's why we use 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, the entire broadband spectrum. The reason we don't limit it is because A, you could be limiting out your response and not even know it, that you cut it out if you limited the frequency. But because we don't know what range they're going to come in with the broadband white noise due to stochastic resonance or inverse stochastic resonance, that voice becomes amplified. We can cut out the broadband white noise from it and just hear the actual voice.
Oh, neat. Okay. And another question that I had that I wrote down, are you working generally with the same spirits, or are you noticing that different personalities are coming and going all the time? How does this work?
Yeah, Cherie, you got this one.
Yeah, Cherie's nodding. She's got something.
Well, to our experience, most of the time we have the same spirit, and sometimes we get different spirits, because whenever we go investigate and then we do the EVP session, we will get the same voice, same response, like, "Hi, Tony, I'm your friend." So we get that the same different locations, same voice as well.
Yeah, it'll vary for sure.
Yeah.
It depends on the day. It depends on the the moods of the operator. It depends on what location you're in. We have had different voices every time we've turned it on, but there are a certain set that do seem to repeat. The ones that, like when we're having difficulty or trying to test stuff or make adjustments, we'll notice that the voice that came through when, Cherie says, spirits, help him out. What should he adjust? Yeah. Those voices we recognize and are similar. So the fact of the matter is, just like walking out on the street and walking up to a random human being walking around and asking them a strange question, it's their free will whether they're going to answer you or not answer you or ignore you.
Or it's the same spirit or not.
It's the same with spirits. We can build a device that they can communicate, but we can't force them to communicate.
Correct.
Sure. I was just wondering because earlier you said that they seem to be a little confused at first, but now seem to understand the process. So I was like, well, are these the same spirits, or is this knowledge somehow just becoming recognized in the spirit world, and therefore whoever comes through kind of understands, just in a quantum entanglement or a Akashic record kind of way, or right. Something. Is there a shared knowledge in your experience of the ones you communicate with, or that's why
absolutely shared knowledge? But I'll turn that over to Ron and Lourdes to take that a little deeper.
I mean, I think it's the Staticom is out there. That they know about it. It's out there in the universe. But it's interesting because when we started using it, yes, we got to hear me and this and that. But when Tony and Cherie started doing it, we got questions about Tony. Like they were asking us, like they wanted to know who Tony was. And the only thing that we can think of is that they were used to us doing it. And now all of a sudden this new person comes along and they were like, wait, what's going on? And we got, like, you can tell the story, but.
And I don't think we're pioneering something in that aspect. I mean, spirit communication has been a thing for quite a long time. Direct radio voice, also, which predates the Frank's box or any ghost box, goes back further. But I think when we brought it back, since not a lot of people were doing, I mean, there were people even into the 80s, Mark Macy out of Colorado. But for the most, and I think Marcello Bacci still at that point, Annabella Cardoso in Spain still does direct radio voice. But I think when we did it, it maybe hit the radar, so to speak, that it was new people or new entities that were connecting.
More modernized because we filter it, which hasn't been done. That, as far as we know, it hasn't been done. So that was a new aspect of it that they may not have understood in the beginning. That's
true. Initially, not the case. And then a gentleman named Keith Clark from Paranormal.com introduced us to the software element of it to filter sound in real time. And we did for a while with DRV, and then we got away from it. We went back to a purist, just used the radio thing. But there was something to it that was kind of still yanking on our heartstrings a little bit. So we went back, and then I just took a deep dive into what, if you were a sound engineer, you would think, or an audio engineer, was probably counterproductive, counterintuitive, because we were trying everything. But we're not trying to mix Beyonce's next hit. Not for lack of trying, because I'm open to it if she's listening.
Sure.
But the point is, we were trying to do something different, so we were trying all different things. Then with as we moved forward, and adding Tony and Cherie to the mix, we tried even more things. And that's when we really saw the process leap forward. But yeah, I think because we are conscious, I mean, mediums connect and get information without mechanisms. And we've worked with several, Tony and Cherie have worked with mediums before, when you get stuff that is vetted by one or the other. And so I do think from, you mentioned like an Akashic Records kind of, we do think that there is a universal phenomenal consciousness of which we are dissociated from. Mm-hmm. And our equipment, despite what some people in the paranormal might think, does not give us extrasensory abilities. But what it does is it modulates the experience. We have sensors, bodily sensors, right, that tell us what's happening in the world around us, like a dashboard on a plane. Tells the pilot what's going on around the plane. You can black the windows out. He can still navigate and fly and land it because he's got the necessary information for what's going around him and what's happening. The pilot never makes the mistake that we make, and this is why we're putting a different paradigm out with reality being consciousness or being mental processes, thought. Not your thought or mine, but thoughts out there outside of our own, like yours and mine, are separate, if that makes sense. And we're putting that out there because with physicalism, when we look at, say that there's this 3D measurable world out there where this ghost stuff and everything doesn't make sense, what we're saying is that the thing measured is going after the measurement, because you have to perceive something in order to measure it to have physicality. That would be to take the map and put it ahead of the territory. Without the territory, the lines and colors, and it doesn't mean anything. It's pointing to something else. So we use that foundation for a philosophy of mind that we're dissociated from, because it makes this stuff not fantastical, magical stuff that seems to be lacking in scientific explanation, because it's a defining of reality that's different, and science can't define reality. It can only model it, predict it. So it's different. So that's been a huge vertical, I guess, for when we speak and present now too.
No, that's brilliant. In some I.T.C circles, and maybe you guys have, I'm sure you've probably heard of this. This has come to my attention a few times, that there's a belief that the more you use a modality of I.T.C, the stronger the responses become. And so do you feel that we as operators of these things become intrinsically a part of the process? That is not just, some bells and whistles and algorithms creating something, but that we are a part of the calculation here, or a part of that process. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would completely agree with that. I mean, they scientifically tested Marcello Bacci, even to the point of pulling out the vacuum tubes out of the radio. They pulled the first one out. They pulled the second one out. I believe they pulled the third one out. He still got voices. The only thing they could remove so that the box would not get the voices was Marcello himself.
Oh,
yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So we've always been part of the process.
Right.
It's just that we notice it more, and it seems to get stronger because we are the ones that are willing to observe it, that are willing to experience it. If you don't believe it, even if you did experience it, if you can just dismiss it with something then that's what you get. So yeah, I think we always are the process. We're part of the process. And if you observe it and we're willing to experience it, then you're going to experience it more.
Yeah, we are an irreplaceable part of the process, because the instrumentation that we use to facilitate it only modulates the experience so we can have it.
Right.
But an experience needs an experiencer. So there is no communication, there is no process, there is no radio, there's no I.T.C if there is not an experiencer to have the experience. So I think we are absolutely part of it, not in the same way where people will say spirit boxes or I.T.C is akin to like a Ouija board, where I think that's a form of channeling where you are availing yourself as the instrument. Whereas for us, the medium is the device, which is modulating the experience, not ourselves. But yeah, I don't think if you pull us out of it, it's like if I leave, your thoughts are still there. They're independent of me, right? You have your own. So if I leave, I don't have the experience. So we have to be part of the process, I think, for any kind of spirit communication to be possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, we're definitely a part of that circuit is my opinion. And, I mean, because I think that it is a connection, like you imply. I mean, this is communication. And in order to communicate, you have to have two communicating parties. It's possible if you just left this on that you would hear voices from time to time, because as you explained, apparently it picks up when they're talking to each other as well, yep. Which is fascinating to me, because it's like a window into, another vibrational or frequency that we're just not aware of. And that's really exciting.
It does do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also to answer your question about the operator being intrinsically involved in the process, both Ron and Lourdes on the East Coast and Cherie and I on the West Coast do what's called the digital seance initiatives, where we literally take Staticom out in front of groups of people and demonstrate what it can do live, then let them ask questions and get their own answers. But we have noticed, and Ron and Lourdes, you may be able to to speak to this as well. But what we've noticed is we'll have people from the audience ask a question, and then we'll wait. But sometimes we notice no response. But if I ask their question for them, the response seems to come in almost immediately, versus it's almost like they didn't know if they should answer them. So the operator does play a huge effect in the process.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've seen both happen, but I do think that there's definitely something to what Tony's saying. I mean, when we were doing direct radio voice, when Tony and Cherie got on, I would say if somebody looked at the results they got it immediately and assumed that there was nothing to that, it would be foolish. You're talking about two people who had been doing spirit communication, especially I.T.C, for years, and with good intentions and with, you know, a genuine purpose. And so they were doing it for years. So the connection is not contingent upon the methodology, but it is upon the operator, I think, and the intent. The methodology is just part of what modulates the experience so we can have it.
The intent is a big part of it, because talking about the Digital Science Initiative, one of the other things that we noticed that we weren't expecting was that when we would bring it out to people wanted to talk to their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Some of them got responses from their loved ones, and they would say that it was life-changing for them, and it was a big moment for them. But if it wasn't for their intent to speak to that loved one, then that experience would have never happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And just to remove any element of charlatanism to that aspect of it, we don't ever lead anybody and try to lead them along a path of thinking they're connecting to somebody. We let them ask the questions, and they get stuff that's proprietary, the names of someone who passed or how they passed or whatever. They get details that only they know. And then they have the experience. So we provide the avenue for it, but we don't nurture that experience for them.
Right.
If that makes sense, because that we don't want to appear to be like we're trying to create some kind of a facade that's not genuine.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating stuff. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, because, and this is something we've talked about before the show, that I'm interested in your takes on this, and this is the phone apps. There's a plethora of phone applications out there that I think are largely clones of each other for the most part. I think there's some more unique programs out there, maybe, and maybe some that are. I think most of them are just gimmicky and trying to suck people's wallets. But there seem to be a few out there that at least are made with good intentions. What is your take on these, and do you think that they too can be effective?
Yeah, Tony, you can go on this first if you want. I have a short explanation on my take on apps, but I think you're going to get more detail from Tony on this.
Well, you know, there are ones that do seem to produce some results. The biggest concern, and I'm going to speak generally about apps as a whole, not to any specific ones. There are ones that we've used, we've gotten responses from them. But the first problem is not knowing what was put into the database, meaning the database that's producing the vocals or the consonants that are in there. And the problem is, without that very specific knowledge of knowing every piece of what's in there, it is physically impossible to determine if something came out of the word database or is paranormal. It's literally an absolute impossibility unless you've played it enough to realize the words are coming up, you know, every 20 minutes or whatever the case is. And there are ones like that. Or if it's spitting out words left and right, none of them have any conjunction or relevance to each other. And there's a lot of devices out there like that. But the main concern is, again, based on what we've learned from our research and what's actually needed to produce vocals from disembodied consciousness, word banks aren't needed. Sweep is not needed. 99% of the mechanisms within the way apps are designed and work are not needed for spirit communication. The other problem with apps is that they are built usually quickly. They are built to get a couple of bucks off of each sale. And that, my personal opinion anyway, is that's the intent of it.
Okay.
And I've also experienced with apps. I seen some, and I don't remember which app, and honestly, I don't even remember the person, but they were in there typing away. I'm like, what are you doing? So they had gathered the information of the location and certain words they were putting in there. Like, like they were cheating basically, but I guess they didn't realize that that's what they were doing because they were willing to tell me what it was that they were doing. They had gathered information and putting keywords in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can do that? Like, I didn't even know they can do that. Some apps, you can do that.
Yeah.
I think also for me, it's kind of like an upgrade of Ovilus.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes not even an upgrade, but yeah, the Ovilus works off the same principle. It's,
because Ovilus is just spitting words randomly, but for when you're using the app, it's kind of like, they make it really nicely to sound like.
No, you're absolutely correct. And then they change the voice. They make words sound scary to
like
give effect. So it's, it's entertainment. And that's how we classify the majority of them. Now, are there some out there, and I'm not going to name them, but have we used and actually gotten what we believe to be good responses? We have, but they're few and far between.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a slightly completely in league with what they said. I don't disagree with one word they said. And when the guy who built ghost boxes, who knows the inner workings of mechanisms that use sounds, says that, again, I think that's something to listen. That's one of the things I love about what Tony and Cherie bring to the table is they have experience with building in the inner workings of boxes that we don't. We understand, but they have practical application experience of it. One of the things that I will not gravitate towards apps for is because when we do anything, and people always, you'll hear scientific method and stuff thrown around a lot. If you know the idea of Occam's razor, the shortest amount of theoretical entities to explain something that makes sense, right? That seems to rationally have support. So if you look at what we do, it is for I.T.C. the most parsimonious approach to take. There's white noise. We filter it. That's it. So it's got the fewest theoretical steps or entities within the process. I have, like Tony and Cherie and like Lourdes mentioned, I've seen apps produce words that had timing and relevance that seemed not, the person didn't say the answer in the question, so it seemed like it was genuinely a response. I don't think that they can't work. I don't also think that there is a magical app that has some kind of ability through the phone to do what other apps can't do or connect to the other side. I think if they're able to somehow reach us, right, where we have this experience that's modulated by a piece of equipment that otherwise wouldn't be something our sensory input would detect, it wouldn't hit the dashboard, what we perceive, then it's just simply the fact that it's an experience that's being modulated by a mechanism. Mm-hmm. But the mechanism, the app itself is irrelevant.
So it would be the phone.
Right. And to go one step further under the idea of analytic idealism, where there is no physical world, everything physical that we measure and perceive is the representation of the thing out there, but not the thing in and of itself. Right? Like if you look an icon on your computer, you double click a folder, you open another folder, you double click a file, it opens a video. If you had to experience every aspect of that process, every line, every code, every extension, your head would explode. Your physical structure wouldn't be able to hold together. It would be, you're not able to, through perception, mirror the outside world in an exact way of how it perceives. So we get a representation of it the same way the computer gives you just as much as you need to represent to get the process or the effect to experience something. So I don't think that there's an app that's capable of doing that. And if you think that there's no actual physical object because it's the representation of what is out there, then it is just a matter of a mental process out there in your universal consciousness or your Akashic record area influencing or impinging upon your mental process through which you have the experience of communication as this device modulates it. That's it. The magical app idea, I don't see.
I like that. I think that's good. You know, you guys brought up the Ovilus, and one thing that's always puzzled me about this is that I don't know who created the first Ovilus, and it's not important, but of course everybody's heard of it if they're into watching any of the ghost shows. The Ovilus is everywhere and has been, and several versions of it, but they produce a device and say, if you use your energy, you can create words on this device. Well, how do they know? I mean, what is the learning curve on this energetic being to be able to adjust their frequencies in such a way as to create entire words and sentences? I just can't imagine. Leave it a month and then come back, maybe, but to show up out of the blue and, you know, you're in some Victorian village somewhere where it's like they have no idea what this box is or the light on it, and somehow they're just instantly able to translate messages through energy. I don't get that, you know?
I agree with that to some point. There's two sides to that.
Okay.
That line of thinking. You know, if you go back, you know, to people in the I.T.C arena that had these grandeur thoughts of creating something that would communicate to the afterlife. I'm talking about Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison. I mean, Thomas Edison phoned to the dead. He wanted to create that so bad. Tesla was going head to head with Edison to try to see who could come up with it first. Neither one of them, unfortunately, did. But Edison, being a fantastic, intelligent scientist as well, made a statement that said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, when we switch from scanning radio to white noise, guess what white noise is? Energy, frequency, and vibration. So if those are the fundamental building blocks to the universe, to the fact that we're getting spirit communication, my guess is disembodied consciousness or universal consciousness is those same building blocks: energy, frequency, and vibration. Then for them to be able to overlap to get that communication across seems to make perfect sense.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is it's somewhat, these are some of the things that in the paranormal that we also, when the four of us do lectures, that we try to speak to. These are axiomatic ideas that are just accepted just as a given. They're not questioned. They use energy to manipulate and form words through the obelisk, but nobody tells you how. Right. There's not even a theoretical guess. You can say that's what they do, that they manipulate the inner workings of the device and select words from a bank. You can say that. Can I prove that that's not true? No. But it doesn't have any explanatory power that makes it worth looking into further because it doesn't have any foundation. You can't empirically test it. You don't really know. There's no way to in any way assess that that's what's going on. It's purely a convenient fiction. It's what the device appears to be doing. So we just say that that's what it is. I could just as likely say that an old pair of underwear that I used to have is floating around the orbit of Jupiter. You can't prove that it's not, but maybe back in the day, an ET came down, they stole some of my laundry, and then they kicked it out into outer space, and so there's a pair of my old underwear floating around Jupiter. I can't prove that it's not true, but it doesn't have any explanatory power worth looking into. That's my point, I guess.
Ron just created an existential paradox of what was I going to say? Schrodinger underwear?
Because we can't just say things are, and then that's a problem. I just finished. I wrote a 10-page academic essay that's going to be in my 5th book on the ideas behind stone tape theory and psychometry, which completely spit in the face of physics and what physicalism and materialism that says that there is a 3D world out there says from a scientific point of view. They're saying that this is material that's actually physical and out there that we observe, and our created consciousness in our brain takes it in through perception. But that world out there doesn't have any qualitative experiential properties. It's not qualitative. It doesn't have love, sweetness of a piece of chocolate, emotions. None of that stuff is there. So how can the trauma of somebody at an event, place that they get shot, or somebody gets murdered, or how can, even through psychometry, how can emotional states be inherited by a piece of wood through a volitional act of human emoting? You're attributing qualitative experiences to something you just said as matter doesn't have any of that.
It doesn't make sense.
And then how can you turn around and release it to the point where who's ever there to perceive it perceives it exactly as it happened? Yeah, it's a conflict of structure.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's completely contradictory to the paradigm of science that they're trying to ascribe it to. And yes, people will say that wood and rocks and crystals can absorb and can amplify energy. But when you're talking about that, you're talking about data. Now, if somebody yelled, "Oh my God, I was shot," and then you walked into a 1700s location and you heard a voice go, "Oh my God, I was shot," then you might have a reason to think that it stored the information. You still don't have an explanation, like Tony said, for how it gets played back. Nobody knows what the play button is. So that is a huge explanatory gap in that theory that makes it really hard to digest it. But when you're talking about traumas and emotions, when mediums go into a place and go, "I feel something," there's no reason to think that something physical can take on attributes of qualitative feelings or experiences like that, where they don't have those normally. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. If they don't have qualitative sense, why would they store it? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a paradox for sure. I mean, my God, I can tell we could just talk for hours. This is very easy to talk with you guys, and it's been an incredibly fascinating journey. I would hope you guys could take a couple minutes and tell everybody how to stay in touch with what you're doing, follow up, learn more about Staticom and your individual projects as well.
Sure.
Who's going to start?
Tony and Cherie will go.
Well, we've got combined sites with all four of us. If you're interested to see more of the development of Staticom, how it went from direct radio voice when we removed the radio, switched to a white noise generator. Ron was getting messages that he couldn't hear because they were coming through so fast. He said, "Oh my God, how do we slow down white noise, live white noise? Is that even possible?" And we did it. Ron had a great idea. All of those developments go from DRV to Staticom, to which is now Staticom 2.0 today with the last set of upgrades that were made. You can go to YouTube just type in Staticom in YouTube and you'll see a Staticom page says Ron, Lourdes, Tony and Cherie. That's it. You can go to Tony Rathman on Facebook. Most of everything we do is there. You can go to entityvoices.com. You'll find a Staticom page there. You can go to Gonyak Paranormal or Gonyak.com. Which one?
No,
GonyakParanormal.com.
You got it.
GonyakParanormal.com. They've got an entire Staticom section there. Their Facebook pages. Basically, if you go to Google and just type in Staticom, you'll get podcast after demonstration, clips off YouTube. That's probably the easiest way if you can't remember anything of the other URLs or anything we mentioned.
Yeah, our website has a lot of events there that we're all doing. So if you are interested in seeing it for yourself, you go on one of the websites and it'll list the events that we're doing throughout the year.
Right.
That's amazing. And Ron, you mentioned your books. Where can people find those?
Books 1 through 4 are, I know book 4 is available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, but all 4 of them are on Amazon for sure.
Okay.
I think Barnes & Noble might be new to the table with this, so they have my 4th one. But the first 4 are all available on Amazon. Our Gonyak Paranormal site has a little Amazon A on it that takes you right to the author page so you can find them. If you put my name in, you will also find them that way as well. And am I leaving anything out?
Yeah.
Well, the only thing we're leaving out is if somebody really wants to take a deep dive into Staticom, we have a 3-part docuseries out on Paraflix. It'll take up about 3 hours and 7 minutes of your life, but it is worth watching.
Very cool.
We broke it down though.
Yeah,
You broke it down.
3-episode docuseries. Yeah, which Tony orchestrated the editing and a lot of the producing on it, and it was really so well done.
Thank you.
It was a long journey to document, and I think he did a great job of representing it. We have testimonials from Dr. Annabella Cardoso, who is, I think, the last surviving of the old guard of the actual pioneers, not from TV.
Correct.
Yes.
Of EVP and I.T.C. For sure. Bloody Mary from New Orleans did a testimonial for it. We have Joshua Shaw, an audio engineer, did a testimonial for it. Anthony Simonelli from Queens.
Keith Clark,
Keith Clark from Paranormal.com. So we really really had a lot of support with it.
It was a lot of information, and Tony did a great job doing the docuseries because it was a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I guess the most natural question that I'm probably going to get bombarded with after this airs is, can people get this? Or is there a plan to make it available?
I'll let you answer that, Ron.
Hot potato.
I'm thinking the same thing. So the answer to that is, at some point we're thinking yes. There are logistical problems in selling this because it was not birthed with the idea of going to market. I think we mentioned this before the show, but Lourdes and I got into DRV purely out of research. We saw these people getting sentences and full conversations with white noise only, with a vacuum tube radio, and we were dying to know if we could replicate that, let alone try to expound or expand on what they were doing. So that was why we got into it. And then you take the Rathmans, who are now part of this, a huge part of where it's gone. There wouldn't be some of the developments to 2.0 we just upgraded to without them. They did it when they did I.T.C, even with boxes, purely for research, didn't sell anything. So none of us had any experience with taking something to market like this. And then the other logistical problem is a lot of the components we use within the computer part of it are proprietary. Some of them are not expensive, but we license some of them. So we can't sell somebody else's licensed product as an ingredient in what we make. So, and if we did, there would be thousands of licenses for given products under the names Rathman, Yacovetti, Gonzalez. So no, we're not doing that.
Plus,
go ahead, Cherie.
Sorry to interrupt. I think
go ahead.
I think it will be hard if ever we're going to put it in market. There's a lot of stages, like you have to be patient. It's just hard. Too many things to learn about this method. It's not only one thing. So I think not unlike you buy a spirit box or any equipment, you just switch it on and that's it. It's going to work like that. This one, it's not. You have to find the tune in order for you to get that clarity. It's just
it's a method, not a device.
Exactly.
But the other concern, and Ron was probably going there, so if I cut you off, Ron, I apologize.
No,
but there's 4 of us, and if we literally were to release this, we don't know the boundaries of Staticom. We want to continue the research on it. If we literally released it and we had, let's say, just 1,000 people asking us questions, let alone a couple 100,000 asking us questions, the research would come to complete stop because we wouldn't be able to handle just the questions. Hey, I set it up, but I'm not hearing this. What's wrong? I mean, we could spend a lifetime just answering questions. So it's also that balance between if we are to release it and when we release it, how do we best do that? How do we best answer questions, but still be able to continue the research, which is what started this whole process to begin with.
Yeah, he's spot on. We don't have the manpower or the human power to geek squad an entire community of people if they have any questions. And Cherie said it best. There is an onus of responsibility on the operator to figure some of this stuff out. It is not, people see the result, and just like a box, they want you to sell them the ability to have that result. But you don't just switch it on. What we may do when the time is right is we may sell like a consult.
Mapping.
Like a mapping. These are the components. This is the order they go. Each, like a PDF, each page has a component and all the settings, that we use to start it off at. They go in this order. Some FAQs for people who maybe, what about this? What about that? Just trying to get ahead of it all. But so when Tony said he thinks he knows where I'm going, he was right. because after that, with the FAQs would come the influx of all these questions. Hey, do you have a minute? And we would not be able to field all of those, and we would probably feel somewhat culpable for being able to help everybody because we sold it to them.
Sure.
And the thing is, with the mapping, once you have everything set up, you're still going to have to put in the work to adjust it. It's not going to automatically happen.
Yeah.
So the operator has an obligation, if they want to do it, to sit there and actually play with it and tune it, and it doesn't just magically happen just like that.
Yeah. Well, I just know people are going to be excited to check this out. I mean, I'm excited. That was the first question I had for Tony when he reached out for me. I'm like, where can I get this? The first thing, because
we bring it out to the public. We bring it out with the Digital Seance Initiative events, which are like seances where the medium is Staticom. Tony and Cherie are doing some incredibly awesome Paracons coming up where they get to speak and present, and they join the Celebrity Ghost Hunt, 2 of which they are the celebrities.
Oh, nice.
We're doing the same thing on our side. We're doing some of the Paracons that ask us to come out. And that's kind of one of the cool things is that when people want to see it, a lot of times productions will call up and say, hey, send me one of your devices. I'll credit you for it. I want to put it in my production or my show. They have to bring our asses out now. Because it's Staticom, Static-Ron, Static-Lourdes, Static Cherie, and Static Tony. And that's the only way it works. So we're also part of that too, and we're both looking at a lot of opportunities to go places and share it and demonstrate it. And that's part of what's fun for us is interacting with the public, giving them those experiences, those moments of closure, which Marcello Bacci made direct radio voice famous for.
Yeah.
Right.
Giving people these moments of closure, this the solace of thinking they connected with a loved one or having that experience. So it's awesome we get to do that. I wouldn't want to just sell that off necessarily.
Sure.
No, well, and we understand the interest in it. Trust me, when I first saw it as DRV, and I was all over Ron, and I'm like, come on, just explain to me how this is working and let me be part of this. And I so thankful that we did get to join them and brought Staticom where it is today. But we completely understand people wanting to try it, and we want that too. We want the paranormal community to be able to replicate what we're getting. Maybe even make advances that we didn't think about, but literally to be able to say, oh my gosh, I tried it, it worked, listen to this. Yeah. We do want that to happen. We're just not there quite yet.
No.
Yeah. Tony telling that story makes me realize that my moment to try to get one of his Evox Ghost Box out of him probably passed. I had my moment to apply pressure, guilt, sympathy. Come on. I didn't do it. I feel foolish now.
Had you said that when I first saw DRV and said, tell you what, we'll let you in for the Evox, I would have been like, here, take it.
About it.
We're poking fun at the instance, but truth be told, for us, when they expressed an interest in working on it with us, it was a no-brainer. Yeah. They were treating us kindly. They were treating people in the field kindly. His work was brilliant. Her work was brilliant. They had a solid reputation. People like and respect them. He was doing stuff for research. He wasn't selling anything. Again, nothing against selling things, but the fact that he wasn't doing that, which was a very unique thing to us, also meant something. So it was good people who had a lot to offer, who wanted in. And to me, that was an opportunity for us, not an opportunity we were affording them. So we look at it differently, I guess, that way. We have all 4 of us benefit from all 4 of us being a part of it.
Absolutely. We would not be where we are today if it wasn't for each and every one of the 4 you see in front of you now.
Well, yeah. I'm thrilled you guys got together because what you've done is incredible. It's incredibly exciting, and I believe it could very well be the next big thing in furthering that communication gap and bridging the communication between us and what lies beyond. And I'm really excited about it. And I just want to thank you all for being here. This has been absolutely amazing and thought-provoking. And thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. This was wonderful.
Well, yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to let us share our stories and our ideas behind what we're doing and what we're doing.
And that's part of our goal, to make people think They need to think, not necessarily believe everything and say, okay. I think people.
See, that's why she's here. I love that she thought of that, because I did not. Yeah, even with my books, I don't ever. It's our position when we lecture is never. We know, trust us. We know better than you. Listen to us. That's not. If we can make you think, if you listen to everything we said on this show and agree with all of it, good. If you agree with some of it, good. None of it, also good. Because then you're thinking about why you do or don't, and that's what we want to do, is just provoke thought. And if what we say sounds like it's the best or makes sense, then that's good. Then we've taught or shared something. And if it doesn't, it maybe leads you to what you think is better or more intelligent way to look at this stuff or define reality or whatever it is we spoke to. So that's great that you mentioned that we want to just have an impact by making people think and reassessing things and not just accepting these axiomatic things that get handed down through the paranormal without understanding or being able to explain or speak to it, other than that's just how it is.
Well, it's been fascinating. And I was talking to Tony, and we're going to get you guys back on one of the live streams as well, when our audience can ask questions as well and take part of the conversation. But thank you guys again. This has been a real pleasure. It's been an amazing honor to meet all four of you. And I really I had a ball talking with you guys tonight.
Oh, thank
awesome.
you.
So did we. So did we.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did.
Before we wrap it up here today, the Staticom team did provide several files, which are video-based files. So for those of you that have a chance, check out these this show on the video podcast, which can be seen on our YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble pages. But for those of you listening, I'll do my best to explain what is going on prior to each sound file, so that you can listen for these words that are collected. Again, remember, this is not produced by anything other than white noise and a very proprietary software build that is designed to capture these spirit voices in the noise, as outlined by the Staticom team during the interview. So keep that in mind, because some of these, well, they're all very impressive, but some of them are mind-blowing. So we'll get into those now. I would recommend to any of you listening, if you can, if it's possible, where you're listening to the show, to use headphones, because oftentimes reviewing electronic voice phenomena evidence it's nuanced, and headphones certainly make for better listening. Before each clip, I'm going to go through what is suggested by the Staticom team was said on the clips, and then you can review it and come to your own conclusions. So without further ado, let's dive into this. Okay, the first one up is a pretty cool EVP. Initially, you're going to hear the person asking the questions from the Staticom team, and then some various responses. So yeah, and you'll be able to tell which is which, so don't worry about that. But the first one, allegedly the EVPs are, he is, the next part is good message, and then how impressive. And as you review it, I think that's pretty much what you're going to hear, but take a listen.
Is Ron running Staticom right now? Yes. Can you say to Ron, can you say Tony says hello?
Okay, and the next sample that's coming up, again, there's a conversation going on, and you may hear the following words or quotes that the Staticom team pulled up after reviewing these clips. And the first one is, that's right, Turkish, yes, yes we are, spirit, yes, he doesn't lie, and perfect. So have a listen and tell me what you think.
Spirits, can you hear me?
That's right.
That doesn't sound like English. What language are you speaking?
Turkish.
You're speaking Turkish? I only speak English. Can you speak to me in English? Yes, okay, thank you. I heard you say spirits. Can I speak with extraterrestrials? Yes. I mean, I would think if I can speak with spirits, I should be able to speak with extraterrestrials too, right?
Okay, the next one is a shorter one. And the responses that they recorded from this, they believe said Rathman, which of course is the last name of one of the team members. And we love these tests.
All right, let me hear you say Rathman.
How about now, spirits? Can you say Staticom?
Okay, now the following clip is kind of darker in tone. And I think it's important because this was done on location. And some hauntings are benign, friendly, kind. And there's some pretty upset spirits. So this one has a whole bunch of pieces to it. And these are very dark voices. So here's the quotes that they pulled from the session. I miss this place. I am pissed off. And then the next one is kind of profanity. It's effing B word. And then we lived damnation. Infuriated. That famous demon. He minds demons. That feels nice. Family appears. It hit them with demons. See, you make us angered. Look, it's out there, people, and you people think it's good. You'll crash and burn. And I was really kind of floored by this one because the clarity of these statements is really pretty profound.
Not fair, I heard.
You know what we're doing. Well, is it easier? Stagnation.
The next sample is a little shorter, but again, very clear. I am somebody, consciousness. Look at me. I am Tony's friend. And Tony, of course, referring to Tony Rathman. The next one is We're Able to Now. This is a pretty short one, but it's We're Able to Now. And I think you're going to be pretty impressed by this one, too.
Can you guys hear us? We're able to now?
So the last one that we're going to cover is a little bit of background. The team was having some technical issues with the software and with their configurations due to an update. And they were dealing with some pulsing audio and like an echoey audio. And they did finally get it dialed in. And then they ask any spirits that were present what just happened. And the response is pretty mind-blowing. It's, your instrument appears to carry pulsing beats. Bad connection.
Maybe they're trying to connect. And since it's doing her,
I'll let it play out for a minute.
I'm gonna message her now. If that's you trying to connect to Tony and Cherie, please keep doing your thing then.
What happened here? What happened to us?
Sorry about that.
So as you can see, this is a pretty profound sampling of what the Staticom project is accomplishing, and it's really exciting stuff. Again, please follow up with the link in the show description for more information on how to stay in touch with the Staticom team. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's just a little bit different kind of show, but it does address some pretty exciting stuff. So I hope you had a good time. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.